Good fine afternoon, fellow YouTubers. Before I go run some errands, I figured I'd stop and chit-chat with you for a bit. So, I decided to put 12 wands in my batch, and I still need sandpaper. I've been trying to get the last couple of days, but I keep getting distracted. That's my fault for the most part, but that's not a problem because I'll be going to get that stuff shortly. Now, if you're gonna make a wand, you're better off getting real sticks to make them. Anybody can take hot glue and a chopstick. But like I said, YouTube, I like to use actual sticks. You know, to get the sticks that I need for my wands, this is, as you can see before I've even carved it, this is a nice standard length for a wand. The bark is relatively fresh. You're going to need either a knife and some sandpaper, or what I like to use is a bark carving knife and some mini snippers for snipping smaller branches. Now, the subtle art of wand making can be quite rewarding. It's a great hobby to get into if you're looking to, you know, explore your creative side and, you know, and people think, oh, you make it look so easy. Oh, trust me, it's a lot harder than it looks, especially if you're sanding in by hand. Now, maybe if I had like a mini lathe, these would go a lot quicker, but a lathe would make a lot more mess. So this method, YouTube, may take longer, but this is how I like to make wands. I'll get a branch, a stick if you will, and go ahead and snip the nubs off. And let's see, where do I want to put the tip on this? Gonna hold the stick and kind of determine which end would make the tip. I've noticed that this end is a little bit fatter, and then it gets kind of skinnier as it goes towards this side. So to get these ready for sandpaper, what I like to do is I'll take my branch cutters, and in the side I'm putting the tip in, I'll take the branch cutters and I'll cut the tip into it. There we go. I like that. That's nice. This next batch of wands are going to be a bit more expensive because I'm making them a bit more custom. I'll be trying to put copper around the handles. That'll look pretty sick if I do say so myself. At least that's the goal. And, yeah, there we go. Snip, snip, snip. Now, if you don't have branch cutters, you can always use a small pocket knife and just kind of, you know. But, now I'm going to take my branch carving knife. This is a bark knife. This is great for getting the bark off. And there's a certain technique I use when using the bark knife. I want it to look, the bark to look like that when I'm carving the bark off. That creates even lines when you're carving the bark off. Now you could just use sandpaper to get your bark off if you didn't want to use a sharp knife. But using all sandpaper for the whole thing would take forever. Just saying. So now I want to go around in a circle around the entire stick here, YouTube. And I want to take and just carve that bark right off. You could use a chopstick to make a wand and hot glue, but if you're going to make a wand, this method will get better results, in my opinion. As somebody who practices magic, not the card game, but the real shit, instead of praying that your life can get better, why not make it better by using the power of magic? Yeah. Now, carving wands can be a great way to, you know, gain a hobby. And, you know, there's a lot of people who practice magic and carve wands. I'm not the only one. It's a great way to make new friends and literally carve a holdable piece of work. Alright. Now I left the bark on the handle, like so. Now at this point, if you wanted to stop here for the wand, you could. I mean, this is a very basic, very plain wand. You get a little bit of bark for the handle, a little bit of no bark for the thing right here, for the blade of the wand. But, well, the finished product ends up looking like this. This is my wand that I carry with me sometimes. It's a basic handheld wand. I mean, there's so many steps to making these YouTube. But I suppose if you wanted to be a bit more finicky and make the sanding a little bit easier, you could take your carving knife and push down on those knots and kind of knock them off. I mean, you could take sandpaper and sand these knots off by hand, but if you wanted to make it the sanding a little bit easier, then you take that bark carving knife and just doop, go in at an angle and doop, pop it off. Now, ancient pagans have been carving wands for centuries. They would either use a sharp blade or a sharp stone, and if they wanted to put a crystal in their wand, they would find a crystal and a stick big enough for it, and then they'd take a sharp dagger and they would whittle it out. They would literally whittle it by hand, and they didn't have the modern conveniences of an electric drill, so they pretty much made do with what they had. And once they got the crystal hole tight enough to where you could just pop it in there and it wouldn't come out, they'd pull it back out. They put some like sap from a tree, you know, something sticky that'll hold it in there. And then they would pop the crystal in place, get it in there nice and snug. They'd leave it to dry. So once the sap dried, they'd probably use other things too, like clay and sap, to hold it in the hole. Because these were the resources found from Mother Earth. They didn't have the convenience of Gorilla Glue. But this is the modern way to carve a wand without, you know. So when I see people using hot glue and chopsticks to make these wands, you know, I'm like, well, that's cute for a party decoration, I suppose. Like, if you want to make something quick and easy. But this is like the first step to making how I make my wands. Very basic. Go ahead and, yeah. And I guess if you wanted more of an elder wand sort of look, then you could just, you know, sand them off to a point, but not too much. But after the bark carving knife has done its work, this is pretty good. This will make sanding super easy when I go to make this into a wand. But if you wanted to stop here, you could. This is a very basic how-to wand. I mean, at this point, if you wanted to dip this in Mod Podge and let it dry, it'd come out nice and shiny, you know, if you wanted. But really, the next step, if you wanted to make this into a wand, you take leather cord, tie it in a knot at the top of your handle, and then you want to take that leather cord and wrap it nice and tight around. And then once it gets down to about the bottom of it right here, circle back up around back to the top, and then tie it, and then get a small length of it about this long, break it off your roll, and then tie that second knot right in front of your first knot. And take a dab of Gorilla Glue, all-purpose clear drying Gorilla Glue, and put the glue on the knot of your handle, let it dry. Once the glue's done drying on the knots, you can take your snippers and that excess long string that you have from that second knot, just trim it right down to the glue. That way it's nice and flat. And once you've done that, you can then add like a clear lacquer or laxative of some sort. Like I use Mod Podge, that makes it shiny. And once the Mod Podge dries, now in theory you wouldn't even have to use Gorilla Glue for the knot. You could just dip the whole wand in Mod Podge and paint it with Mod Podge and then let it dry and then trim the excess. But the reason why I use clear drying Gorilla Glue is so that way I know for sure the handle ain't coming off. But this one is ready to be sanded and all that, so I'm going to add it to the pile that I got over here. Now I found a couple trees around town that I can get sticks from really easily, which makes it easier. Just because I show you all how to make a wand, it might offer some fair competition, but people are always going to come back to buy a KOBRAJFS handmade wand because it's just the principle of the matter. Having a wand made by a commoner or having a wand made by somebody who actually practices magic, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer. Well, this one's going to produce an interesting looking wand because there's a lot of nubs at the bottom here. I'm going to leave this end right here with all the knots for the handle, because that'll look cool for the handle. Because I noticed that the nubs up here on the other end are pretty easy to trim. Don't take that much either. Okay, so plus when I hold it like right here, this just feels like the handle already. I'm gonna visualize, you know. I mean, if you want the wands to look pretty and look like they came from an actual wizard shop or what have you, you know, it takes a bit of time and patience. And then this is the problem, YouTube, with the education system. When there is a budget cut, the first things to go are usually art, choir, and stuff like that. We live in a society that favors athletics over creativity, and yeah, I'm strong enough for sports, but really sports is just not my forte. But the only sport I would do would be airsofting or paintball or clay shooting, which looks really fun, or windsurfing. But I also like playing pool and bowling. Those are about the only two sports that I like besides airsofting and paintball. Bowling and pool. Well, pool especially is a sport. It's a gentleman's game, really. You know what I'm saying? It requires mathematics and, you know, not trying to sound sexist. Women can play pool too, but you know what I meant. It requires actual thinking, not just. It does. You know what I'm saying? Your physical strength will only get you so far in a sport like pool. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and carve the bark off of this one. I mean, I was going to go grab like 2 more sticks for the batch, and figured I might as well do that before I get supplies. But the weather's been a wee bit chilly, so, you know, when the weather gets colder, you know. And this is the problem with it, YouTube, what are kids who are not very athletic supposed to do for an extracurricular activity when in school the first thing that gets cut is the art program, you know, the music department, the drama club, you know. That's kind of unfair. But that's just the society we live in. And furthermore, YouTube, why the hell are teachers paid less than athletes? I mean, no one's arguing that football is a dangerous sport, but that doesn't mean, you know, heart surgeons and teachers are paid less yearly than teachers. It's appalling, YouTube. These teachers are responsible for molding the minds and the future brains of tomorrow. To me, I think that's a lot more important than being able to chuck around a goddamn football. Because that's just the thing of it, YouTube. I could be the future president one day, or the next big inventor, you know. And a lot of these kids, when their favorite programs are cut from schools, you know what I'm saying, they're more likely to sit at home, play video games, get into drugs, get into gangs, you know. And then our society wants to sit there and say, well, today's youth, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you know, okay, that's like eating a bunch of McDonald's, getting super fat, and then blaming McDonald's for it, really. You know, a lot of people complain about how kids are joining gangs and this and that. And I'm like, well, sometimes our society drives people to join. You know, much like an old lady going to church, people join gangs to find a place to belong. It's no different. It's the same concept. You know, if you want to get into something, get into magic. Witchcraft does not discriminate, unlike 98% of most religions. You see what I'm saying, YouTube? Like, magic doesn't care if you're female or male. Women can empower themselves through magic and confidence. Yes, women can empower themselves through the power of Lilith, who is the mother of all demons. You know, you ever see these people in society, YouTube, these people in society who always seem to have the upper hand. And you're thinking to yourself, how the hell do they do it? Some people have learned how to use magic. And of course, if you want to gain an upper hand in society, sometimes it helps to understand people. If you think about it, psychology, human psychology is a form of magic, really. Understanding how these crazy bastards we call humans think and exist. Chemistry. Chemistry, what is that? It's potions. Think about it. Science itself is a form of magic. You're taking one thing and another thing to make another thing happen. You're bending reality by using ingredients. You see someone, and here's a basic science experiment. It's messy, but it works. You take some Mentos, drop it in some Diet Coke, and then you close the lid and shake it up. And then try to open it. See what happens. It'll make a huge mess and it'll explode everywhere. And it's because the chemical reaction with the Mentos reacts with the Diet Coke and it causes it to fizz everywhere. Yeah. Another form of potions making is this brown stuff in my cup, known as coffee. Grab a sip of that while I'm working on this wand here. Yeah. Another aspect of branch of magic is herbology. You know, the study of plants, basically, which is a real thing. You can go to college to study plants. You can go to college to become a genius at chemistry. You know what I'm saying? There we go. It looks cool on the handle like that. I like that. So sometimes, if I want to leave the knots on the wood, I'll just hardly sand it, just sanding it at all. But the bark carving knife that I have here, this took short work of most of what I needed to do. Now when you sand these smooth, and then you take the sandpaper and you pinch it right here, and just, you know what I'm saying? Pretty straightforward. But like I said, if you want to just leave the wand up to this point and sand it, and you didn't want to sand it, you just wanted to get all the bark off one half, leave the other half for the handle to have bark on it, you could totally do that. And if you wanted to polish it afterwards, you know, put some kind of clear coat on it so that way it stays shiny. There you go. Now this is how you make wands, YouTube. You whittle them out of actual wood. You know what I'm saying? Carving wood actually takes a bit of effort. You know what I'm saying? Wrapping hot glue around a chopstick, no offense to nobody who does it, but that doesn't require much effort. And if you're sitting there waiting for it to dry anyways, then you know what I'm saying, carving a stick into a wand may take a little bit longer. Adding paint and leather and whatever else, you know what I'm saying, waiting for it to dry in multiple steps. It may take longer, yes. But the finished product looks good, in my opinion. This is my handheld wand that I have as an example. And then holding this one next to my actual handheld wand, it's about a little bit shorter, but not too much shorter. And this is the problem with our society. YouTube, it really is. Like, if you favor athletics more than you do creativity, then how do you expect a child's mind to grow and learn and expand? You know, not every child is going to learn the same way. Just like not every child is going to be into sports. Now here's the other wand that I carved. And you can see it's a little bit longer than this one that I just carved, but not too much longer. And these are a nice wand length. They're not too short, they're not too long. These need to be sanded, painted, and have handles put on them and what have you. This should be the longest wand in my batch. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know, we could take a little bit more bark off of it. Right here, YouTube. Now, if you decide to get a bark carving knife, be careful, these things are kind of sharp. Okay, YouTube, that's how you carve a fucking wand. You see that shit? Yeah. And you're gonna have like little, you know what I'm saying, little slivers of it hanging off, like little chunks of it, you know, blah, blah, blah. At this point, once you've got it carved out, you want to leave the handle nice and fat, but you want to make the blade of your wand a little bit smaller than the handle. And doing that, you could just use the bark carving knife if you wanted to, but that would take a little bit too long. You just want to use this for getting the bark off, basically. Frickin' sandpaper is the best. And what kind of sandpaper should you use? Heavy grit. Easy as piss. The heavy grit will make it smooth. You can also use it to get those rough cuts from the snippers and your point rounded off so it looks, you know, a bit more professional. But I mean, if you want to make a wand look just like this, very plain, no handle, you know, well, it does technically have a handle, but I mean, you see the difference between a finished wand and one that just needs the rest of the steps. You know what I'm saying, YouTube? Yeah. And then sometimes you'll get sticks like this one that kind of have a little bit of bend to them. All the sticks on my bench over here need to be sanded so I can paint them, and then after I paint them, I'll add the custom copper handles to them. I'm not going to give away all my trade secrets, mind you, but, you know, making a wand out of an actual stick versus using some chopstick and covering it in glue. I mean, the chopstick ones, I guarantee you they're going to break easier. You know, and at some point, you can't have that wand near any heat if it's covered in hot glue, because then the hot glue will just melt. See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying, YouTube? But if you're going to start making wands, if you're going to start carving wands, start off with the small ones like this one. Real basic, real easy. But once you get a bit more advanced in wand making, then you can make bad mamba jambas like this one right here. This is my crystal scepter that I made. These take a lot longer to make and a lot more time. When I tell people I make crystal wands and sell them on Etsy, as well as the handheld wands, right now these are the only two styles I've offered on Etsy so far. I don't make the crystal scepters very often, which makes them, you know, a bit more valuable on the market, I guess, but I needed a way to make an example, so when I say to people, yeah, I make these for a deal, you know. Yeah, this thing took for freaking ever to make. There's a lot of sanding, a lot of cutting, and the key to making your quartz crystal stay in there nice and tight, I will say this. You want to make sure the hole is just tight enough that the crystal that you use fits snugly in there, and that when you go to pull it back out, it takes a little bit of elbow grease to pull it out. That's how you know it. You know that when you put your clear drying Gorilla Glue inside the hole, and then you pop the crystal back into place, and you let it dry, and then once it's done drying, get like a nice coat of like clear drying glue around the bottom of it right here. Let that dry. And then if you want to wrap copper wire around it, you can go ahead and do that. That's what I did right here with my wand. Yeah. People are asking, what kind of crystal is this? This is a smoky shaman garden quartz. I picked it up at the Wonder Gift Shop over on CY. There's also the Jade Elephant as well. Those are the only two shops that I know of. But I usually go to the Wonder just because, you know, I've always gone there. I mean, like, that's been, you know, my one-stop shop because they have other things too in there. That's like Casper's magic store, basically, for lack of a better term, yeah. They sell incense, they sell sage, they sell wind chimes, books, candles, music, crystals, all kinds of cool shit. Tibetan singing bowls, that kind of thing, yeah. You know, and a lot of people would talk mad smack, like, oh, you make a living painting sticks. Actually, you're just jealous for one, and two, I make a living making handheld artwork. You know what I'm saying? I would have sold this on Etsy, but I almost got my blood on this carving it, which in wand lore, if you get your blood or almost get your blood on it, you know, yeah. But the next scepter I make will be going on Etsy. I don't make them too often just because they take longer, you know. But yeah, these things are cool, man. Watch, and this thing's heavy too, man. This has got some weight to it. I figured if Christians can walk around with the goddamn Bible in their hand in town, then why shouldn't I be able to walk around town with a magic wand? I'm just saying. Freedom of religion's a beautiful thing, YouTube. And it's a freedom that should not be taken for granted. Considering a lot of countries don't have that freedom. You know, you're pretty much stuck with whatever the country's forced to believe in some cases, you know. And there are some countries where the restriction to religion is so severe that, you know, you're not even allowed to carve wands or make them because it's considered taboo. So the freedom of religion comes with a price, and that price is, as long as you are not directly hurting other people with your religious beliefs, then who cares? You know, to each his or her own. How to carve a basic handheld wand. At that point, if you didn't want to add leather to the handle or anything, you could just paint it, let it dry, and put some podge on it, some Mod Podge. And the Mod Podge that I use, I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like this. This is the gloss luster version. This is what makes my wands shiny. This is another wand I'm trying to make off on the side here. I want to see if I can figure out a way to put quartz crystals in a handheld wand. That's why there's a hole right here in the bottom of it. And this is just a trial, but if they make quartz crystals this tiny, which I know they do, it'd be cool for like a handheld one, especially if it's, you know, yeah. It's got 2 different shades of green on it. I mean, this is what it would look like, more painted and sanded smooth without a handle, basically. And I haven't put podge on it yet because I'm still working on this thing. I want to add more details to it. This is just a blank canvas at this point still. But, yeah. Yeah, a female friend of mine wanted me to make her a wand, and I said, well, what are you into? And she goes, I'm into garden and green and stuff like that. And I'm like, alright, I'll see what I can do. And if I can get, like, some decorative ornament type stuff that has, like, little metal leaves on them, I can take the metal leaves and then kind of glue them right above where the handle's going to be. Kind of give it that look, you know. Yeah. But at this point, YouTube, at this point, fucking shit. God damn it, I dropped it. Be careful. Oh, it's okay. This thing's pretty solid, but still. Fucking clumsy bastard. Okay. If you didn't want to add a handle to it, though, still, if you didn't want to add a handle to it, you could just paint it and put the podge on it. You know. Didn't mean to drop it, but it is what it is. Okay, anyways. That's how you carve a basic handheld wand. It's not that difficult. Although I might end up remaking that wand because I don't know. This stick doesn't look very thick. I may end up remaking it just because I might want something a little bit thicker. Or maybe I'm overthinking it. Well, let me compare it to the bottom line. Okay, it's not too much smaller than okay, I'm not going to overthink it. By the time I add the quartz crystal to it, the bottom of it, like right in there, and like some metal leaves around the top, right by the handle, yeah, that'll look cool. Nope, I'm not going to overthink it. And I'll tell you right now, making just a basic wand without a crystal is the easiest way to start making wands. Adding quartz crystals does get a bit more difficult, as you know, if you drill a hole too thin in diameter, the crystal will pop out and the wall around it will break. So you want a nice thick wall surrounding your quartz. So all I can do is try. I've never actually attempted to add quartz to the bottom of these before because it's such a small surface, but I do have a drill bits that are small enough to make a hole for these to have quartz in them. It's just going to be finding quartz crystals that are small enough, you know. I know Etsy has these little quartz crystals that are like this big, and they're like little pendants. You know, if I can find something like that here in town, then, you know, it's always a bit more convenient if you can get your supplies in town. That way you don't have to order it online, wait for it, you know. But 98 to 99% of my supplies that I use for my business I can get here in town. The only thing I don't get here in town is the shipping tubes. I order those, or my dad orders those online. Yeah. But yeah, and these are custom shipping tubes that are nice and smaller, so they don't, you know what I'm saying? They're small enough to hold the wands, and yeah, most of you, of course, who have received a wand by now know. And that's the thing of it, YouTube. Freaking people who see me make wands are like, they see I have them, they're like, oh, could you make me one, or could you make my kid one, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Yeah, then I could. But if the younger generation gets into wand making, it teaches creativity and it gives them a creative outlet, you know. And if you do decide to get into wand carving, a good thing to keep in mind for wand carving is patience, you know. Your wands don't have to particularly look a certain way. I mean, they don't have to be exactly like this one. But if you want a nice handheld wand like this, you know what I'm saying? Like, even the tip on this one is not sharp. It's rounded, but it's not sharp enough where you can actually poke somebody and hurt them, you know. It's sharp enough and round enough you can tell which end's the wand end, which end's the handle. Yeah. And wands like this are great for freaking like sticking it in your pocket, you know, or your belt loop. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, YouTube, thank you for watching the how-to video. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube doing these how to make wand videos. And I click on it, and most of them are just using chopsticks and hot glue and construction paper and sandpaper, and I'm like, well, that's cute. But if you want something a bit more authentic, that's how you do it. I'll catch you, you cool cobras on the flip side.